Hi, I'm Sam Durkin. I am a painter, and today I'm going to try to show you how I paint an abstract. I'm going to be painting a picture of some emperor penguins, but we're going to try to make them more abstract than realistic. When I paint, I use acrylic paints. As you see, we've got quite a large canvas, so we're going to use quite large brushes. This brush is 1 inch. No, actually 2 inches. As you see, even on a large canvas like this, a 2-inch brush is really, it's going to take up a very small amount of the space, and you can still get the detail that you'll want. If we do need to have any detail, we can go down to one of these, which is a 1-inch brush, and just put some extra detail in. But because we're painting an abstract, we don't need to make it as detailed as you might for some other paintings. This doesn't mean any less skill. In fact, to some extent more skill is required, because you're trying to give an impression of the picture without actually painting it. But we'll get more onto that later. First thing we've got to do though is we've got to put an undercoat on. Now, I like to mix up my colours on a palette, but this palette is just another canvas, because palettes are quite expensive, and a canvas you can get, well, maybe one this sort of size, maybe for £2 or £3. It's just cheaper, and you get a nice crazy abstract just from mixing the colours. Okay, I use 3 colours in my paintings. This is primarily because it gives you more control. Now, if you've looked at any colour wheels or any kind of colour theory, you'll know that there are actually only 3 pigments that you can use in the world. There are magenta, yellow, and cyan. Now, if you get the process versions of these, you should be able to get them from Winsor & Newton or any of the other paint suppliers. They're mathematically accurate to the exact points. These colours are essentially the pure points of colour, which means you can create every other colour from them if you mix them with white as well. Even black you can make from the. Just if you mix all these in exactly the right quantities, you will get a form of black. Okay, so let's start now. This penguin abstract that we're going to be doing, and there's quite a great deal of blue in the picture. So the first thing I'm going to do is mix some white here on the canvas, on palette canvas. Add a little tiny. That's in the painting. Little tiny touch of blue. Okay, but I don't want it pure cyan, because it's very unusual in nature. But we are making an abstract, so it's okay not to be exactly on with the colours. I'm going to mix in a touch of this burnt umber. Now, you don't want a lot of this, because you want to keep those colours quite pure. But I'm going to put a little tiny drop. See, just 1 drop. Now, there we go. Mix the coloured paint on. So we're going to get quite a lot of, trying to get it as. There we go. Now this is going to form the background colour. Now this background colour is essentially we're going to be painting over this essentially at the end of it, but it's nice to have something for the paint to sit on properly. So this colour can essentially go all over the canvas. Now I'm going to pause now and get on with the painting, and I'll see you back here in a moment. Okay, right, we're back. As you see, I've essentially covered the canvas in the general areas that are going to be blue, and left out some gaps here for where the shapes of the penguins are going to be. And obviously you've got a large one here in the foreground, there's one here off to the side. Now, the penguins are mostly white, obviously, but with some black pieces in, but they're not blue. They've essentially got a little bit of yellow, a little bit of brown, and the way to get that will be we're going to put a little drop of yellow onto the mixing board, and we're going to get a little bit of red here, a little bit of magenta. There we go. Once again, a little tiny bit of burnt umber, but we don't want to mix too much of this because it can kill the colour if we're not careful. There we go, that's enough. Because we're mixing with pale colours again, it's not going to worry too much. You've got a little bit of blue on your brush here, because actually I would have normally mixed in a little touch of blue to get that brown colour coming through. Now if you look on the palette here, that's a very, very vibrant red and orange coming here out of these two colours mixing together. If we mix them in here, you'll see the effect that we're getting, that it's dulling it down more and more, but we don't need it even this strong. So we're going to cut down here, get some more of this white mixed up here, see? And this may even be too strong, but it's not. We're not going to worry about it too much at this stage, because essentially we're just blocking in some colour. So here we go, putting the colour onto the canvas here. You see how I'm moving the brush strokes around, just causing sort of almost chaotic strokes, so that the brush shapes and the brush strokes can all be crossed across each other. There we go. Darkness down here, shading. There we go. Right. Water, just brush it drying off a little there. There's a little bit more white. This is quite dark at the moment. As you see, this looks like a mess, and that is essentially what you want at this stage. We're trying to cause as much chaos almost in our brush strokes as we can, because this technique is what I term as interference. We want to create a pattern that is as interesting to look at for the eye as the actual object that we're looking at the end of the painting. So I keep just putting these down, and you'll see these nice sort of squared shapes we're getting from the brush are going to form something really nice later, and they're going to distract the eye and break up the picture. See, I'm going to even throw some of the paint that was on there before into the mix, so it's all starting to merge together. And we're going to continue to do this all the way through the painting, and it will slowly get more and more realistic as we go. Okay, right. Well, we've now essentially covered the canvas in paint. There's a little spot here I might just fill in now. It's important. Essentially, we're covering the canvas in paint here because paint sits better on paint, especially with acrylics. So we need to fill in the canvas as much as we can with essentially an underlayer base coat. It's a good idea though if the base coat is very similar to the painting you're coming to at the end, but it's not absolutely essential. If we could have covered the whole canvas in a medium tone of essentially all of these colours mixed together, that would have worked too. As you see, I've already filled out some shapes here, so that we're getting almost an impression of some penguins happening here already, but we're nowhere near finished. We've got to wait a little bit longer before we can get down to the real business. But yeah, I'm quite happy with how that's turning out so far. I'm already feeling that we've got some penguins happening here. And I'll be back to you after it's dried. Now that the canvas is dry, we should be able to now put in the darker areas on the canvas. Now, I never like using black, even though these penguins are obviously going to appear to be black. It's essentially an old impressionist idea of not using black, because black has a tendency to suck the life out of the rest of the painting and make it fit, and it draws your eye far too powerfully towards the black areas. We don't really want to do that because we want to make the painting feel natural all the way across it. So what we want to do is use the three primary colours and mix them together to form a pseudo black, one that isn't quite so intense. Now, I'm going to get another palette because the other one is obviously covered in lighter shades, and we don't want to do that on the canvas because we're trying to get a darker shade. Right, so start off, we'll mix some of the magenta. Here we go. And some of the cyan. Love the silly noises these make. And finally, put in a little bit of the yellow. Now, I want this black to be more towards the blue-purple end of the spectrum because of the rest of the painting. We're kind of balancing out against the fact that the penguins are going to have some areas of orange in them and yellow. As you can see, I've put some of those in now. But the first thing to do is mix up this black. And if you see here on the canvas, I've got all these three colours mixing together. It's a bit green here at the moment, so we're going to mix some of that magenta back in there. And as you see, we're producing, well, I don't know if it will show up on the camera, but it's quite a dark blue we're getting here. The opposite to blue is orange, so obviously we got some. We maybe need a little bit more red in there, because if you see, that's a bit of a greeny blue now. So the way to pull it back, get the white off, change to a cleaner brush. And you see here, I have a whole pile of rags to dry brushes on. You don't want the paint to get too wet, because if it gets too wet it becomes translucent. Now, sometimes you want that, but right now we don't. We want to cover the canvas with some black areas. So I'm going to take a little bit more of this magenta. Mix it onto the palette. There we go. And that's a pretty legitimate black. When it dries, it will tend to dry a little bit darker than it is here. But let's see how it looks on the canvas. We're not going to be too fussy about this to start with, because essentially we're trying to create something that is more about the paint on the canvas than it is about the objects in the canvas. So I'm just going to fill in some dark areas here. Make sure this brush isn't too wet. So we're being fairly bold, just filling in the general areas where the darkness is going to be on these penguin shapes. As you see, when it's a bit too thin, the paint is translucent, which is very useful later on, but right now we're just trying to get the black in. Some down here for his feet. I think we have a wing there. I feel we got some up here too. Maybe a flipper is in here. These are probably going to need second or third coats. A little bit more definition put in. Some darkness maybe here. Flippers in. Here. Down to there. It's here. Yeah, a bit of flipper there. There's probably a darker area behind this. There you go. Get some of the shape coming out there now. And as you see, we're slowly forming up a a picture that you can already start to identify as fairly crude, to be fair, penguins, but they're there nonetheless. We've got a pretty good structure. I think there's some down there. They have feathers in here like this. But it's not really dark enough right at the moment, so we're going to have to leave that to dry for a bit. The great thing is, of course, with acrylics, they don't take too long to dry, so I'll be back here in about 10 minutes. Okay. As you see, while it was drying a little, I've worked to give some shade here on these penguins. But what we've got here is a little bit it's too strong, if you know what I mean. The paint strokes are quite obvious and a bit too artificial, and they don't feel like they're merging in with the painting quite as much as I'd like. I think we want to have quite a dark area on this bird. See some sort of shadow from this one in the front here. So we're going to just try to use very watered down brush strokes here, because we're just sort of merging across the paint that we've already done. And so you see it's sort of laying on top of the previous brush strokes to build up some shape, some patterns. We don't want to be too accurate at this stage, because we're just blocking stuff in. We want to keep it fairly loose to keep that abstract feeling in. So we want to make it all feel like it's naturally flowing across the whole painting. See, there we go. As you see, I've made some straight edge angles here that sort of reinforce the cubist feel of the painting. See the edge of the brush there, see? Get all these straight edge angles. Cut in and make some very interesting patterns. There we go. It's evidently still going to need some time to dry, because I'm still picking up some paint off the canvas as I'm putting these brush strokes in. Okay, so as you see, we've worked on the picture some more. The next bit, these areas of yellow are not really bright enough for me, so what I'm going to do is go on to a full, use just a few primary yellow on them, really to bring them out. It's going to take me a little while, but I'll paint it and then I'll come back and I'll show you what I've done. Okay, we've put some primary yellow in, and we put we're forming these shapes here that form the heads of the penguins a little, because they have these little white areas just behind the head. And bringing this white area here, just working over the other paint. See, we're sort of covering it up, but not entirely. Some of this will obviously be covered up completely by the end of the painting. So those are the areas that are purely that colour, but all the way through we're trying to keep a fairly loose working attitude. To the piece. Change. These beak areas are a little bit pinky, so I've put some magenta with the yellow. Just to give that effect. I have to mix up some more paint for that, so I'll do that in a bit. Okay, we're getting the penguin's shape more in here. I think I'm going to work on the bodies a little bit longer, and then we'll come to doing the background and cutting in the areas that we need to have those background shapes into, and see if we can follow that through the rest of the picture. We've just essentially I've blocked out a large areas, some white here. See this area here, we've taken a line down here because this is where the edge of this wing is. So essentially we'll work on this, covering these black areas to slowly get rid of them. Because while we put them in nice and shabbily at the beginning, it's nice to cut in over the paint. It's sort of easier to do that than trying to paint that black line in clearly. Plus we may at some date want to break up some of these lines anyway, but it's a good idea to put them in now. The next stage, I think, will really be the sky, because we need to get the shapes of their heads in slightly better, because at the moment they are essentially spilling out into the rest of the picture. Don't quite like how that paint's sitting. It's looking a little ugly, so tighten that up a little. Remember, a great deal of this is about the texture and the shape of the paint that's going onto the canvas. Cut that line down there. Get those wings showing up a little bit. Bring that there. Bring some of these shapes in. Keep the shadowing quite strong though. As you notice, as we're painting over some of these areas that we had dark before, the paint shows below, just like it does here. So you can use that to your advantage by essentially you building up layers of paint. And if we carry on doing that, what we get is a sort of approximation of the picture by constantly painting in areas that are generally there, and what you'll get is a sort of a composition where the whole piece will add up to the final painting, and your mind will put the bits together for you. And then you'll get the full painting sort of emerge in your mind. But obviously, at the moment, we've got quite we can clearly see these are penguins, although right now it's quite rough. We're going to tie that up and make it look very much more intentional, because that's obviously the object at the end of the day. Right, back in a moment. We're sort of approaching the final stage of the painting. We've got the basic shapes of all the penguins in. I put the background, worked on the background a little bit more, and cut into some of the shapes of the penguins. If you see from the difference, so we're defining their beaks a lot more, and we're using some some of the angles from the brush to develop these lines further. And you see we've got that shadow from the underlying black being worked out here. That will need a little bit more on there, and similarly just here. Look across. Now, while I'm working, I'm always just trying to take a step back from the painting. And making sure that there is a sort of consistent balance of every stroke. Needs to be filled in a little bit more here. So if we've got maybe an iceberg or something behind the birds. The stage to get to here from where we were last time was taking about an hour, which is why I haven't shown me painting all of it. I shouldn't cut it, but that's to be defined a little bit more. As you see, I'm still trying to keep all the time keeping in mind that we're not attempting to make an absolutely realistic depiction of the birds. We've always got to keep in mind that we're not painting every feather, and the composition of shape. See this lovely little shape in here we've got going on with this curve there, and coming down to here we've got this lovely little thing here. Define that edge more. Bring this in. We can then start breaking up some of it. Because when we have a very nice defined line here, you see I'm cutting in with the knife, with the brush. But you could use a knife here, but I actually prefer a brush because the curve's nicer. Every line. I'm going to have to leave this bit of the bird here because we're starting to get to a point where essentially this is almost becoming a palette. I can pick this colour up here and I can place it over there. As the brush will essentially slowly become clogged with paint from your previous brush strokes. So you can actually use that as a technique to mix your colours across canvas. I want to be quite heavy and bold with all of these strokes. Just doing in there. There, I made a little tiny mistake. Merge that in by just pounding around it. There you go, it's all disappeared. Because the danger here is we're getting to a awkward stage of the painting where we're trying to make it more abstract while remaining or keeping everything while we know what it is. But I think we've got more scope for going more abstract with this if we want to. So I'm going to take those opportunities and balance it out a bit. I'm going to use a bit of a rag here for a moment rather than the brush. I've taken off a little bit too much, cut a little bit too much of that paint up. advise that all the time. It's a little bit risky. I'm wanting some more of this, the colour of this blues that we've got coming on here. Maybe to be echoed into the feathers of the birds like we have going on here, because this is nice and exciting, and I want to get that kind of excitement through the rest of the piece. So mix up some blue here, which I've been using here as shadow. But I think if I mix up with a bit of white, we should, let's take a chance here, we should be able to put some of it, maybe a little bit too weak. Let's try a bit more bold, here we go. Yeah, no, that's alright, I'm liking that, see, here we go. And as you see, that's already brought the painting alive a little bit. There's those grey areas where taking up some of the energy from the painting. Like I said earlier, black's a very dangerous colour to work with. It may not be quite clear on the camera here, but none of this is actually black. These are all tones that are made out of other colours. Take that up a little bit. So individually, all of these brush strokes continue to look abstract, and they sort of merge and break up the image a little bit. So our picture actually becomes about these blue, black and yellow areas. For a bit of here to give a impression of the ice. They're on. Throw a bit more white into the mix. This area over here should be nice and wet. Come there. Too much on it. Bring that down. There we are. And cut in there. So enjoying that. Follow that line, this one, that echo in here too, so it's almost this line here, and the iceberg behind is echoing into this one's chest area, so we'll make that shadow sort of part of that line of echo. If we can keep those kind of echoes through the rest of the piece, so there's a line here that goes down here. I want to keep that kind of like it feels like there's a flow of this almost echoing shadow piece. So let's do it on this one too. Almost like we're making some ice cubes out of that whole piece. So we can cut in down here maybe. Curve here on the bill, follow that sweep out, so we're allowing the shapes of our naturalistic painting to dictate to some extent where the abstract elements are going to come from. Okay. Right, well, we'll leave that to dry for a little bit and just take some of the excess paint off of here. Okay, well, we'll have to leave that to dry for a bit because this now has quite a lot of paint on it, and if we work too much more on this, we're in danger of essentially making too much of a mess. Obviously we will make a bit of a mess, it's an abstract, but let's not make it too messy. Okay, we're pretty much finished this painting now. I left it to dry for about a day for tackling the rest of it because, as I said before, the paint was quite tacky and we were essentially just moving the paint about the page, the canvas. What I've been doing here is essentially cutting into the image, making some slightly more abstract shapes into it. Just looking for balance, getting some more angles and edges, putting some extra colour into the pieces. So we've got some blue coming into these darker areas because I didn't want them to be too heavy. Just looking for sort of balancing shapes and colour lines. And I think we've got something that feels more energetic and dynamic than if I just painted this realistically. Well, you can obviously see there's a lot of realism in here. My style of painting is abstract realism, so I've attempted to break the picture up into shapes as well as colours, and I think we still get a massive impression that these are penguins. I mean, you couldn't dispute that. At the same time, when you're looking at it, you realise that you're looking at just angles and shapes and lines and edges, and you know that it's your mind that's making up the picture, rather than the artist doing everything. It's partly you as well. So, I hope you've enjoyed my painting demonstration, and look forward to showing you the next painting I do. Goodbye and happy painting.